Thank you so much, Lou, and really a great plan here. And as Lou mentioned, we are looking for you, those of you who are in the audience, to really help us think through how we're going to continue pulling these resources forward, adapting them and using them in your daily lives. And that's the purpose of these breakout groups. So we're going to send you off in just a moment into 4 breakout groups. You've been pre-selected. If you didn't select, we've assigned you. So if you get in a breakout group and you hate it, well, it's your own fault. Well, I'm just kidding. Actually, you can always back channel to my colleague Owen via WhatsApp, and we can move you to a different breakout if you so desire. But we're really looking for a robust conversation in these breakout groups. The 4 of them, again, are data, tech, and policy, number 1. Number 2, capacity building. Number 3, outreach and multi-stakeholder engagement. And number 4, wildlife trafficking synergies beyond routes. When you get into those breakout groups, there will be a facilitator in each one. John Godson is going to facilitate on data, tech, and policy, assisted by a note taker, Faith Horner, and then capacity building will be facilitated by Naomi, who will be backed up by Maymay. And outreach and multi-stakeholder engagement is going to be facilitated by Alicia, backed up by Juliana. And wildlife trafficking and synergies beyond routes will be facilitated by Rob, backed up by Renata. In there, once you get in there, there's going to be discussion questions for you to choose from. We don't expect you to answer all the discussion questions, but we want you to work together as a group to pick 1 or 2 that you really want to focus on. And then our note taker will scribe down what you're saying and will also report back on behalf of your group. It's now to almost 10:15. We are a bit behind schedule. We're going to come back a little bit after 10:40. So we're going to try to give you about 20 minutes or so in those breakout groups to really get into some discussion. And then we want to hear some report backs when you get back. But with that, go ahead, Owen, why don't you send us all off to breakout groups, and we'll see you back here in about 20 minutes. Welcome everyone back from breakout groups. Thank you so much for taking quality time with us. And I've heard from many of you that there was some really great discussion going on, and we're really excited to hear what all you guys talked about. We're just going to let our colleagues rejoin us here. Looks like we still have a few folks who are in the breakout rooms who are returning to us. I think we're close to capacity. Is there anybody left in the breakout rooms, Owen?
Nope, everyone should be back.
Okay.
I think
terrific.
a few folks dropped off, but.
Okay, no worries. Thank you all for rejoining us. We're excited to hear your reflections and what you discussed, and we're just going to dive right into it. So I'd love to hear from group number 1, Faith Horner. Tell us what you guys talked about in data, technology, and policy.
Thank you, Richard. Yeah, we had a really productive talk, ran out of time at the end, but we focused mostly on questions 2 and 3, which appear here. So how might we better enable data sharing between transport and law enforcement was the first one we talked about. And I think there were maybe 3, oh, thank you for bringing up the notes. I'm gonna walk through 3 major takeaways that I had, which was first, we discussed what needs to be considered. So what type of data are we looking for? How specific the data needs to be, the use and purpose of sharing the data to determine some of those things, data protection limits, how frequency and how urgently this data needs to be shared with and by key stakeholders. So that was really interesting conversation to kind of frame the question a bit more. And then as we got into the conversation more, I think one of the main things that came up is there is a lack of understanding of who holds what types of data, and that if we, encouraged that conversation, increased that understanding, that maybe, law enforcement and airlines could be leveraging different data sets that they currently don't have access to, or they don't know they have access to, which was really interesting. And then the final thing I'll touch on here in the interest of time is incentives. So what is the incentive for the private sector to share their data Is there a way to get a feedback loop on what impact they're having by sharing their data? And other incentives that got named were the motivation of preventing zoonotic transfer and disease, as well as recognition for their efforts, potentially, reduction in insurance costs, and things like that. So that was the first question, and I'll quickly go over the second question we did, which was the third one about harnessing technology. So a similar conversation, do the different enforcement authorities know what data could be used and who holds that data? The second thing with technology that was really interesting was how technology can be cost saving in terms of decreasing the need for human presence by having pre-screening lists to increase the accuracy of identifying potential or suspect shipments. And I think, there are a couple other softwares out there. They mentioned that risk assessment software on fisheries, which helps to do such detection. How can those efforts be replicated? As well as if you are, I think maybe I'll stop on this final note, if such softwares are being created for combating illicit wildlife trafficking, it is likely to spill over and help combat any illicit activity that is occurring in the air transit sector, which I think was a really great point that a number of people made about, this has a broader impact than just combating wildlife crime. I'm sure I missed some things, but I appreciated everyone's participation. We had a lively discussion.
Thank you, Faith. And anybody who's in that breakout group, please do chat in anything, any other additional comments or thoughts that you might have. But I want to roll us right along here to Mei Mei Chow. Mei Mei, you were talking, taking the notes for capacity building. What did you guys talk about?
Yeah, so our group is led by Naomi Vidal from Kenya Airports Authority, which is one of our champions. So we discussed about the first and the third question. We can move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. So basically, the first two, dashboard and reports, provide very valuable information for companies and also authorities to use them, and also to prioritize what are their focus in certain regions, followed by that training videos and e-learning and some other training materials. These are suitable for frontline personnel and especially custom inspectors. Other than that, case studies from the ACI Combating Wildlife Trafficking Handbook, because these are very specific, so they can learn a thing or two from the handbook. And the last 2 points focus more on some bite-sized, more easily digestible information through social media or other types of publicity materials, for example, newsletters. And most importantly, to promote reporting, even from passengers. We can move on to next slide, please. And next, we discuss about what are the issues and challenges that are stopping or is a problem for adapting e-learning resources. First is the turnover of staff, and how can this be overcome through onboarding training for every staff. And also they can highlight training materials in World Wildlife Day. But also there's a question on face-to-face training is more impactful than e-learning courses, because it's you get to see another person, you get to know the more information. However, in these circumstances, e-learning seems to be the better way to go, since we can't sit in a room. And the third point, knowing what is available and assessing the resources is a challenge. I believe Roots had put together a lot of resources on our website, and that can be accessible. Following that translation, and some companies have taken initiative to do this. For example, ANA is planning to translate the course into Japanese. However, access to technology, computer, phones, and network connection can be a challenge. Other than that, conveying the importance of IWT issues and encouraging learning can be difficult, but Claire has mentioned that you can incorporate those into the organization's learning platform so that everyone can assess that. And finally, gauging learners' progress can be difficult, but we can set passing marks for all those e-learning resources. So yeah, that's all.
Thank you so much, Mimi, and thank you, Naomi, for helping to lead that breakout group. Next, we have our third breakout group on outreach and multi-sector engagement. I know that was facilitated by Alicia Grimes from USAID, and Juliana, you were taking notes. Juliana, what did you guys cover?
Thank you, Richard. We chose questions 1 and 4. The first one, what we see as the key factors, the glue that bind the multi-sectorial partnership. We can go to the answers there, and then I'll go to question 4 later. We don't have that input, so I have that in my slides. So do you want me to share my slides, but I can orally speak? Actually, we thought that finding the commonalities of different stakeholders, understanding their different roles, their different views, the frameworks, and also their languages, not only the spoken languages, but the expertise language was quite important to keep this glue and this strong partnership, understanding also the broader impact of wildlife trafficking and link that to different roles and to different crimes, talking here about convergency, bringing in, for instance, drugs. Traffickers can bring in drugs and they can live with wildlife, and understanding that complexity can facilitate collaboration. Also facilitating collaboration with different partners, building trusts and relationships among law enforcement, having specific trusted groups that goes beyond the national boundaries to international boundaries as well, and trying to unify the message as much as possible as we collaborate, and building or change those messages as much as possible, but also understanding the technicalities. For instance, data is very technical and can be misinterpreted, but also you need to pay attention to specific nuance as we communicate that, publicly. And we need also to protect some of that data so we can ensure the legal process is fully, completed. So understanding that balance is quite relevant. So those were the 4 main points on the first question. And on the last one, the second one was 4th. How can the momentum and collaboration between transport sector, NGOs, and government be sustained to fight wildlife crime? And how have other partnerships been effectively sustained beyond life of donor projects? So Alicia shared some experience from USAID on other projects, but we agree that finding commonalities, we agree that institutionalizing the collaboration, but also the products that we have developed in existing partnerships will really support us going beyond specific projects. Also, again, talking here about the relationship that was built with partners to sustain the work, so we can also go beyond that, trying to create more engagement with the products that we have developed. We have seen several questions about the dashboard, for instance, how we can identify different users for those products that we have developed, potential new audience for that, try to build synergies with other related conservation issues that could leverage support, audience, and finance resource for continuation of work. Also trying to identify critical human and finance resource to continuate. I think that's also important, and we have to acknowledge that. So I think in summary, understanding that this is complex and can be linked to different topics, but we need to identify the commonalities of those issues and all of our partners, respecting, understanding their different roles as well.
Thank you, Juliana. Last breakout group was on wildlife trafficking synergies, facilitated by Rob. And I know, Renata, you were going to take notes in there. Apologies, we couldn't get the translation worked out for you. But Rob, please share what you guys learned.
Great, thanks, Richard. So, hang on, it was a bit good. Yeah, so from just looking at these and from memory, we talked a lot about actually, how do we ensure wildlife trafficking remains on the agenda? So environmental issues, so like, learning from the COVID pandemic and in building on the public appetite for, agendas involving biodiversity and environmental issues. Oh, here we go. Yeah. Do we have any other notes on? Oh, this one. Yeah. Okay. So, like everyone else, I think building the trust between NGOs and law enforcement is crucial to ensuring that it continues. And using associations like IATA, Airports Council International, to push the agendas down on industry, a sort of carrot and stick initiative. So ensuring that it remains at the front of people's minds. And we had a couple of examples. So Brazil has created a national task force between some of the transport companies and other law enforcement to look at how they combat IWT. This is a really good example. These sort of public-private partnership agreements, I think, are probably the future for ensuring that it continues beyond routes and also has some legacy, working with law enforcement. On the other question, we didn't cover so much, but it probably, we looked at how to keep industry accountable, ensuring that demonstrating commitments for wildlife trafficking. So we felt that the ideal is that wildlife trafficking becomes, or the countering wildlife trafficking becomes business as usual. That's going to be the best solution for ensuring that airlines have a policy on it, something that they can act on. Certifications like the IENVA one are great, and if we can push more people towards that, then that is good. And then we looked at really just continuing to connect law enforcement with the NGOs, building the trust in that, and making sure that the people are known, as in the networks are known, so you can act quickly and sharply. That's it.
That's it. Terrific. Thank you so much, Rob, and I appreciate all of our breakout group facilitators and note takers, and for a great discussion. We are going to look at how we can summarize some of this information and share it back with you. So look for more to come on that. Now I want to move us into our closing reflections. We're a bit behind time here, so we're going to try to catch up, but we really do want to create some quality time here. If folks can stay with us for a few minutes past, we welcome that. If not, we all very much understand if you need to leave. But I want to bring up our panelists now. Many of whom we've already heard from and introduced before: Juliana Scavuzzi from ACI, John Godson from IATA, Crawford Allen from Traffic, and Afsoon Namini from WWF. I also particularly want to introduce Megan Hill. Megan, you are the environmental specialist at USAID and part of USAID's counter wildlife trafficking team. You've helped to manage routes for much of its existence and are now helping to spread its lessons and best practices around the agency. So welcome, Juliana, John, Crawford, Megan, and Afsoon. Go ahead, Owen, if you could just bring up our panelists. I want to dive right in here, and I want to ask each of you, if you could, I'm going to give you two questions to choose from, and you can tell me which one you want to do. I'd love to hear either your favorite story or what is your biggest reflection that you're taking from our time as the Routes Partnership. And Juliana, if I could start from you. Tell me your favorite route story or your best reflection.
Sure. Thank you, Richard. Well, my favorite story and stories, it's about the people in this project. And I think Crawford initiated that at the very beginning when he gave his first remarks. I thought, oh, you're actually stealing the thunder, but that's it, right? We have talked a series of times here about building relationship and building trust. So I think we have learned so much with each other, and we have overcome challenges such as addressing the complexity related to the topic and the fact that there are several interdependence with different objectives and expertise. We forged such a successful cooperation with industry, with NGO partners and others. As industry representatives, we have the background and expertise in the sector, but NGOs, USAID, and other partners, they brought in the necessary expertise on wildlife trafficking that without them, we couldn't have done this. So I think that's where it lays the foundation of the significance of our impact, because this work will continue through all of us in different ways, and I believe in different projects as well. Like to mention also the people that we had at ACI supporting this project over the years. So many, some in short timelines, other longer periods, but not only ACI staff, also our member champions. We have seen, you have heard from Brazan and from Naum today, but we have others, and they all have inspired action through that seed that we shall continue to use, and we have created through ROPS. And as we look and I think forward, we really need to plan all along to get those different contributions. But I believe what's more about the opportunity that we have with this, combining this passion and working through this solid group of trusted people and relationships we have built to make sure that regardless of our challenges, our difference, our strengths, we can all collaborate. And I guess it is the final message is we really need to collaborate, and people will make sure that we do that.
So we've laid a lot of groundwork. We've engaged a lot of the right people. Now we just need to continue collaborating and really trying to bring these things to scale. I really appreciate that, Juliana. Afsoon, I'd love to hear your favorite story, but I'd also love for you to kind of reflect and imagine that we're at the Routes 5-year alumni reunion. What would you like to be able to say about how Routes was carried forward and how that story maybe came to life over the next 5 years?
Oh, well, I'd love to say it was great seeing you all at the party where we celebrated, you know, the opportunity for IWT to become as standardized within the transport sector, the way like human trafficking or other important issues to the industry are. So a little bit of celebration, but also just in general that WWF working with stakeholders, including the partners on this call, like ACI and IATA and Traffic and C4ADS, that our relationships have continued and we continue to support each other. And we've added to our champions list, and you know, CEOs and leaders of sustainability and other teams within operations at industry are helping to spread the word.
So we'd love to see these things standardized so that wildlife trafficking takes on the same level of standardization and importance as things like human trafficking. And then we continue to see continuous engagement of stakeholders, champions, and CEOs as we all continue to maintain this momentum and really achieve the kinds of industry-wide impact that we'd like to see.
Absolutely, that's what it's for.
Thank you, Afsoon. John, love to hear your story, but also what's left undone? What did you want to get to that you didn't get to yet?
There's a few things that we didn't get to. There's a few things that we certainly many things that we did get to, but for us, I guess the most important one is that we haven't got a wildlife trafficking metric, an ESG metric. As I'm responsible for aviation environment, and this is the only subject I cover which hasn't got a metric associated with it. This needs to reflect private sector's contribution. You know, we're not only moving from disclosure of ESG on a voluntary basis, it's now mandatory by regulation in 618 different corporate reporting instruments have been launched. And now also to access sustainable finance, investment. They're looking at ESG metrics. So we miss a trick if wildlife isn't included within that context, within that, that framework. We have an SDG, we have our own SDG, 15.7.1 on wildlife trafficking. No one can contribute to it. It is the only one of the 11 indicators that have got no government responded to it. So we've got a problem. The indicator is currently unworkable. The global seizure database. We know that open source information doesn't give us the whole picture. It underrepresents the scale of the problem. We need to understand what is the reluctance between enforcement to talk to each other and to talk to us, because I'm sure we can overcome many of those barriers to get an indication of the true scale and nature of the issue. It's been said many times, we need to wholeheartedly embrace the One Health approach. The challenge especially of the smuggling of non-protected species. Pandemic resilience is a key concern for airlines and the sector as we recover, and the links between zoonotic disease and IWT have not been lost on us. The diseases themselves are agnostic as to whether it's a protected species, and so it would do us a great favor if we started thinking about this in a wider context For example, today we can see that pandemics are included on corporate risk registers. Is IWT included? I guess not. And then finally, more of a two-way partnership with enforcement. Digital intelligence will stop wildlife criminals exploiting transport, but enforcement needs to build the partnerships to realize that vision. Thanks.
Thank you, John. So a lot of work has been done. There's some great things that we can point to, but we need to put the wildlife trafficking metric over the line. We need to get a real handle on the scope of the problem. We need to embrace the One Health approach and make sure that part of pandemic resilience is combating illegal wildlife trade. And we need to really forge more two-way partnerships or multi-way partnerships across the industry and with the law enforcement sector as well. Thanks, John. Crawford, your final thoughts and reflections, please.
Richard, thanks. I don't think we have much time for final reflections as we're over time, so I'll just say thank you. I think we've covered so much today. It leaves me to finally close out not just the meeting. Obviously, Megan will also say thanks, but also just closing routes. And I think that just to say my deepest respect and gratitude to everyone involved. Many people have dedicated so much time to help protect nature, prevent wildlife trafficking, and transform the aviation industry. You've all amazed, inspired, and empowered us to deliver such a successful program under Routes, and I'm sure we're going to continue to collaborate and see the benefits of a sustained impact for Routes in future. We just can't afford to let this momentum stop. Even if it's a new kind of tempo in the way we work, it's going to drive change in new ways. So it's an exciting prospect, and I look forward to engaging with all of you on that. Thank you very much.
Terrific. Thank you, Crawford. Megan, your turn.
Well, I know we are really short on time, and it's really a shame. I had a great story about a monitoring and evaluation learning plan I wanted to share, and that has to have been a first that a MEL plan has ever made a highlights reel. So I will just very quickly talk about some of those early conversations we had at the beginning of Routes and this really complex theory of change and all of our efforts to come up with that metric, like you talked about, John, in terms of how would we know if we had any success, because it's something that's illegal and that you don't see. And that we really struggled really hard to do that. We really wanted to survey airlines and airport staff, but that's a really big audience. And how do you do that? And I just really want to call out the persistence of the Routes team at Traffic and all of the efforts of making it through those spaghetti diagram conversations with us and actually getting a survey done in the end of 2 different airlines with hundreds of respondents, and really being not only to be able to tell what kind of change we might have affected in the airline industry between a baggage handler or a check-in staff, but also about what really works for program effectiveness. So I won't steal her thunder, and I know that Philippa, you're going to go forward and publish those results, but it turns out that we're more effective when we combine communications with training efforts when we're trying to affect change within the industry. And just really my hats off to you, Philippa, for keeping that dedication to MBNL, and I didn't want to lose the opportunity to share that little story, even though I know we're over. And this is the time, Richard, for me to do the final remarks too.
Yes, please.
As a project manager for the US government and on behalf of all of AID, I really want to really think back at the complexity that is Routes. And we have a theory of change, right? But it was by working in partnership with this team of individuals that really turned that theory of change into a reality of change. And just like my MEL example earlier, I think we can be pretty confident that the Routes team really developed and delivered value for the American taxpayer. So I really thank you all for that. And all of our jobs always come down to people. So I really did want to call out Crawford and Michelle. I know you're there somewhere, and Richard from our early days to really bringing this forward and really delivering this partnership for everyone. It takes a lot to bring this kind of plane full of partners to an easy landing, and you all did it with great success. And so Michelle, Philippa, Catherine, Kate, Matt, Marcus, everyone at Traffic, thank you very much for everything that you've done for us. And I know we're not done. We still have several activities to go. We have a lot of outreach to do around the Wildlife Sentinel app and the Project Vakela, South Africa. So we're not done quite yet, but did want to take this moment to ask the participants, thank you for joining us and for staying with us for 3 hours. I know that's a lot of time out of your day. And just to join me in a hearty round of applause for everybody here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Crawford, Juliana, Afsoon, John. Really appreciate your final reflections. I'm sorry that we are over time. I will say just, if I could use an aviation analogy, I think that we've built the plane, we've brought it out to the gate, and we're pulling away from the gate. This is the end of routes, but it is really just the beginning of this journey as we hopefully take off and really see the success that we can have through multi-stakeholder collaboration to combat illegal wildlife trade in the transportation sector. And on behalf of myself, on behalf of the entire Routes Corps team, I want to make sure to thank the U.S. Agency for International Development, Airports Council International, the Center for Advanced Defense Studies, C4ADS, International Air Transportation Association, Traffic, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, U.S. Department of State, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and the WWF, as well as all of our other extended partners around the world. And thanking all of you for joining us for today's fantastic discussion. More to come. And for those of you who are joining us tomorrow for our smaller group session, we look forward to that as well. So we'll see some of you tomorrow. Thank you again. And to close us out, Caroline, if you could please share, we want to share our final video for today, our step up video. And again, thank you all so much for being with us.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks and bye. The video's 2 minutes.
It doesn't fly with us.
No vuelan con nosotros.
Species of animals and plants are critically endangered.
We're in the middle of an extinction event.
We need to take us time.
Galapagos is a World Natural Heritage, and in this airport we're committed to respect and conserve the nature. They don't fly with us.
A luta contra o tráfico de vidas silvestres no aeroporto de Brasília é o nosso compromisso com a vida e com o futuro.
El Aeropuerto Internacional El Dorado, signatario de la declaración del Palacio de Coquín y miembro de la ASI, toma medidas contra el tráfico de vidas silvestres.
Emirates is a long-standing partner of United for Wildlife. We are committed to fighting illegal wildlife trafficking on our flights.
Kenya has done a capacity building measure to train its staff on use of X-ray machines.
We joined and chaired the ACI's Wildlife Trafficking Task Force. ACI is the Airports Council International.
We work very closely in routes. We do a lot of risk mapping to determine what are the hotspots. And from there, we will then work with local authorities, customs, and so on and so forth in our efforts against wildlife trafficking.
It doesn't fly with us.
Ellos no vuelan con nosotros.
Thank you again, everyone, for joining us and staying with us. We'll see you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.